Your brain is being starved of the nutrients it needs to function, and it's happening because of a law passed in 1998. It's in your bread, your cereal, and in your pasta. It is called folic acid, and the government mandated it to be put into virtually everything that you have eaten for nearly 30 years. I'm Dr. Ben Lynch. I spent 15 years researching how folate metabolism dictates your mood, your immune system, and even how your DNA functions. What the science shows contradicts almost everything the FDA has told you for decades. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's the result of modern research proving that the science of 1998 is fundamentally broken. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how this unnatural compound is hijacking your cells, why your blood tests might be tricking you and your doctor, along with the simple food swaps that can finally clear your brain fog and protect your long-term health. Once you see what folic acid is actually doing inside your body, you will never look at a fortified label the same way again. Chapter 1. Folic acid is not folate. Most people think that folic acid and folate are the same thing, and they're not. And this confusion is causing real problems. Here's how it actually works. Folate is the umbrella term. It's the whole family of this B vitamin. It includes all the different types, both natural and unnatural. Natural folates are what you get from real food, leafy greens, liver, and legumes. These are the forms humans have been eating for thousands of years. Folic acid, completely different. It doesn't exist anywhere in nature, not in any food, not in your body, not even on a rock. It was actually created to be cheap, stable, and easy to add to processed foods and your supplements. And the worst part of it, it's biologically inactive. Methylfolate is the natural biologically active form, the one your brain and your nervous system actually use. It's what your body needs to make neurotransmitters, support your healthy DNA, and to run countless essential processes. Now here's the problem. Your body has to convert folic acid into methylfolate before it can use it. And that conversion, it does not work reliably in humans. Understanding this difference could explain why you have been feeling terrible despite doing everything right. Here's how folic acid actually ended up on our planet. In the late 1800s, bread was baked fresh every day. You went to the bakery, bought your loaf, and ate it before it went stale. Flour didn't last long because whole wheat contains oils in the germ that could go rancid within months. That was a problem for the industrialists. They wanted to ship flour across the country and store it on shelves indefinitely. So, in the 1870s, engineers in Minneapolis, men like Edmund LaCroix, George Smith, and John Stevens, perfected steel roller mills that could do something stone mills never could. They could completely strip the bran and germ from wheat, leaving only the starchy white endosperm behind. It was a triumph of commerce and convenience, and a disaster for human health. Those discarded parts, the bran and the germ that were now being sold as animal feed, contain the B vitamins, the folate, and the minerals that humans have been eating for 300,000 years. Within a generation, vitamin deficiency diseases became epidemic. Pellagra, beriberi, anemia, and neural tube defects. Women became infertile. Babies were born with spina bifida. And the solution should have been obvious. Stop stripping the nutrients from grains. Return to whole foods. No. But that didn't serve the interests of the food manufacturers who built billion-dollar business on white flour that never spoiled. So what do? So in 1943, a scientist named Bob Stokeshead at Letterleast Laboratories synthesized a compound that looked, on paper, like it might do what natural folate does. They called this chemical folic acid. I want to be clear. I'm not against synthetic vitamins. Synthetic ascorbic acid works just like vitamin C in an orange. Your body can't tell the difference. Synthetic methylfolate, like quatrefolate, is bioidentical to what your cells actually make. It works immediately with no conversion needed. Folic acid is different. It's not bioidentical to anything in nature. It's biologically inactive until your body converts it. It's a process that requires multiple enzymes and does not work well in humans. And worst of all, it actively blocks your natural folates from being absorbed and used. That's not a vitamin. That is what we call a chemical imposter. This compound does not exist anywhere in nature. Not in spinach, not in liver, not in lentils, not in any food that has ever grown on this planet. And in 1998, the United States government mandated this chemical to be added back to the very same white flour that had been stripped of its natural vitamins in the first place. Think about that for a moment. The food industry created a nutritional crisis by removing nutrients for profit. Then they solved it by adding back a synthetic chemical that human bodies can barely process. And that interferes with the real folate you're trying to get from food. When you see enriched flour or fortified cereals, you're not getting real vitamins put back. You're getting a laboratory-created chemical your body does not recognize, one that's blocking the natural folates you need. And I have got proof. Chapter 2, tested on rats, fed to humans. So how did folic acid end up in our food supply? Scientists approved it, and here's how that happened. Researchers tested folic acid on rats, and they found that rats have an enzyme called DHFR, which is dihydrofolate reductase. This enzyme converts folic acid into biologically active folate very efficiently. Humans also have the same DHFR enzyme. So the thinking was simple. Rats have DHFR, humans have DHFR, we're good. Add it to the food. There was just one problem. Nobody checked whether to see if the human DHFR enzyme works at the same rate as the rat DHFR enzyme. And you know what? It does not. Not even close. It took until 2009 until a landmark study discovers something shocking. Human DHFR activity is less than 2% of rat DHFR activity. Let me say that again, 2%. Here's what that means in practical terms. Your liver can only process about 200 micrograms of folic acid at one time. Anything above that threshold overwhelms the enzyme. A single 400 microgram dose, the amount in most multivitamins, takes over an hour to clear out. A 5 milligram dose, that can take up to 12 hours. And it gets worse. There's almost a 5-fold variation in DHFR enzyme activity between individuals. Some people can process folic acid even slower because of a common genetic variation. About 1 in 5 people of European descent carry 2 copies of this variation. In East Asian populations, nearly half of them. When researchers tested people with this variation who were consuming 500 or more micrograms of folic acid a day, nearly half of them had high levels of unmetabolized folic acid in their blood. That's double the rate of people without the variation. Now let's do some math on what Americans actually consume. 1 bowl of breakfast cereal, 100 micrograms. 2 slices of bread, 70 micrograms. A serving of pasta, 100 micrograms. Your daily multivitamin, 400 micrograms. Oh wait, you're pregnant, 800 to 1,000 micrograms. The average American consumes 600 to 800 micrograms of folic acid every single day, often across multiple meals, never giving DHFR a chance to catch up. Pregnant women with recurrent miscarriage, some doctors, many, actually prescribe 4,000 to 5,000 micrograms a day. That's a dose that could take half a day to process, and they're taking it every single day. Every microgram your DHFR enzyme cannot handle circulates in your bloodstream as unmetabolized folic acid, the exact same synthetic molecule you swallowed. It has 0 biological function. No, worse. It actively blocks the real folate your body needs. When researchers tested Americans, they found that over 95% of the population has detectable unmetabolized folic acid in their blood. This isn't affecting some people. This is affecting you right now. Chapter 3, MTHFR variants are not the problem. You've probably heard about MTHFR, maybe even been tested for it. If you have an MTHFR variant, you've been told to avoid folic acid. And if you don't have an MTHFR variant, you've been told, folic acid is fine, take it. Here's the problem. Both pieces of advice are completely wrong. They're wrong because folic acid is not processed by MTHFR. Let me explain. Think of folic acid conversion like a line of dominoes. There are multiple steps before folic acid actually becomes the methylfolate your body uses. MTHFR is the 4th domino near the end of the line. DHFR enzyme, it's the very first one. If folic acid can't even get past DHFR, it can never even reach the MTHFR enzyme. The MTHFR enzyme never even sees it. And as we just covered, DHFR is catastrophically slow in every single human being, not just people with MTHFR variants, everyone. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. The obsession with MTHFR created a dangerous blind spot. Millions of people without MTHFR variants assume that they can handle folic acid just fine. They can't. Researchers discovered that high folic intake in people with completely normal MTHFR genes creates what they actually call pseudo-MTHFR deficiency. Folic acid doesn't just fail to convert, it actively inhibits and suppresses the the MTHFR enzyme itself. You don't need to have the genetic variant of MTHFR to have MTHFR problems. Folic acid creates a deficiency all on its own. So while everyone's arguing about who has the MTHFR variant and who doesn't, they've missed the issue entirely. Folic acid is problematic for 100% of humans, not because of the fifth domino of MTHFR, because of the first one. The DHFR bottleneck doesn't care about your genetics. It affects everyone equally, because we're all human, not rats. Chapter 4, but doesn't it prevent neural tube defects? Now you're probably thinking,
okay, Dr. Lynch, but folic acid was mandated to prevent neural tube defects. That's protecting babies, right?
That's what we've been told for 27 years. They even just recently passed a law in California that was effective January 1st, 2026, that required folic acid to be added to corn masa flour, which means tortillas and other staple foods are now included. This reason was straightforward. Public health data showed higher rates of neural tube defects in certain populations, including Hispanic mothers, largely because corn-based staples were not previously fortified the way wheat products were. The intention was to close that gap and protect babies, not to harm anyone. And yes, adequate folate status does prevent neural tube defects, but folic acid isn't the only way to achieve adequate folate status. A 2020 analysis examined evidence from countries around the world. They found a very weak correlation between folic acid fortification levels and neural tube defect rates. What did correlate? Socioeconomic status. Countries with higher spending on health, education, and social protection had dramatically lower rates of neural tube defects, regardless of whether or not they fortified the food with folic acid. The correlation was near perfect. R squared equals 0.85. That means 85% of the variation in neural tube defect rates could be explained by socioeconomic factors alone. We gave folic acid 100% of the credit when maybe only 15% was deserved. But better prenatal care, better nutrition, and socioeconomic progress were doing the work. And in some populations, folic acid fortification was actually associated with more neural tube defects, not fewer. And methylfolate and folinic acid, the natural biologically active forms, achieve optimal folate status without creating unmetabolized folic acid. They prevent neural tube defects just as effectively, better, without the risks we're about to discuss. The goal was never wrong. The execution was. Chapter 5, folic acid blocks your brain. Your brain needs active folate to think clearly, regulate your mood, and to stay focused. But getting folate into the brain is not automatic. It has to pass through a tightly controlled security system called the blood-brain barrier. Think of your brain like a secure building with a specific door that only opens for the right credentials. That door is called folate receptor alpha, and it's designed to let methylfolate in, the biologically active form your neurons actually use. Here's the problem. Folic acid binds to the receptor even more tightly than methylfolate does, but it doesn't go through. It just sits there, latches on, and blocks the doorway. Meanwhile, methylfolate, the form your brain is waiting for, cannot get in. It's right there, ready to enter, but the receptor is occupied by a chemical that won't budge, and it gets worse. Remember DHFR, the enzyme that's supposed to convert folic acid into something usable? Your brain has even less of it than your liver does. Brain tissue has extremely low DHFR activity. So even if some folic acid manages to squeeze through, your brain can barely convert it into anything useful once it's inside. The result? A brain that's simultaneously starved for folate and blocked by folic acid. And here's the part that makes this truly devastating. That same receptor, folate receptor alpha, exists in your kidneys, and it has a critical job to do, saving your natural folate from being peed out. Your kidneys filter your blood constantly, dumping everything toxic into your urine. Then they selectively reabsorb nutrients worth keeping, including folate. Under normal circumstances, folate receptor alpha grabs the natural folate and pulls it back into your bloodstream before it's lost forever. But folic acid just doesn't bind more strongly to this receptor in your brain. It binds more strongly everywhere, including your kidneys. When folic acid is present, it hijacks the receptor first, blocking natural methylfolate from being reabsorbed. And research shows that folic acid binding completely abolishes the kidney's ability to save natural folate. So you could be eating spinach, broccoli, and lentils every day. You could be doing everything else right. But if you're also consuming folic acid from the fortified bread and rich pasta or supplements, your body is literally pissing out all that precious natural folate. This is why people can eat folate-rich foods, take folic acid supplements, thinking they're being healthy, and still feel off, and they don't know why. The folic acid they thought was helping is actively sabotaging their folate status. Your brain cannot access folate because folic acid blocks entry at the blood-brain barrier. Your kidneys can't save the folate from your food because folic acid blocks the recycling system. The result? Cerebral folate deficiency. Your brain is starved, not because there isn't enough folate in your body, because folic acid is blocking it at every level. Here's what that looks like. Brain fog that won't lift, mood instability and emotional flatness, sleep disturbances, attention deficits, poor focus, learning disabilities, depression and anxiety that won't respond to treatment. What's striking is that cerebral folate deficiency is already a recognized medical condition, and the clinical guidelines are explicit. Folic acid is contraindicated. Doctors are told not to give it because it interferes with folate transport into the brain and makes the condition worse. Think about that. There's actually a known brain disorder where folic acid is officially forbidden because they know it blocks natural folate from reaching the brain. Now ask yourself, if folic acid blocks brain folate in people with this diagnosis, why would it be any different for the rest of us? I believe we're all somewhere on the spectrum of cerebral folate deficiency, caused by the very chemical we've been told is a vitamin. You know those days where you feel off, when your brain will not cooperate, when you can't seem to care about anything? That might not be stress. It might not be aging. It might be the fortified cereal you ate for breakfast, that prenatal vitamin that you're taking, the enriched bread in your sandwich. The brain needs real folate, methylfolate and folinic acid to produce the neurotransmitters that run your life. Dopamine for motivation, norepinephrine for focus, serotonin for mood stability. And I need to be clear about something. Folinic acid and folic acid are not the same thing. They sound familiar, but folinic acid is a real biologically active form of folate, just like methylfolate. Without adequate real folate reaching your neurons, you literally cannot think clearly, stay motivated, or regulate your emotions, regardless of how much folate your blood tests say you have. And no blood test can tell you whether folate is actually reaching your brain. You can look normal on paper and still be functionally deficient where it matters most. Chapter 6. Folic acid suppresses your immune system. Your immune system has natural killer cells, also called as NK cells, that control your bloodstream, destroying abnormal cells before they become tumors. Folic acid is quietly shutting that down. Studies show NK cell function was 23% lower in women with detectable unmetabolized folic acid. A study on human healthy adults given 5 milligrams of folic acid every day found that after just 90 days, both natural killer cell function and their numbers dropped significantly. Your body isn't just producing weaker NK cells, it's producing fewer of them. Folic acid mimics the effect of a drug called methotrexate, a drug doctors prescribe to autoimmune patients to intentionally slow down an overactive immune system. When your MTHFR enzyme is backed up processing folic acid, your immune cells are starved of the active folate they need to work properly. This is happening in a population where 95% have detectable unmetabolized folic acid. We are collectively suppressing our immune systems, and we've been doing it for 27 years. And here's what should alarm you. We are in the middle of an autoimmune epidemic. Since 1990, autoimmune disease prevalence has nearly doubled worldwide. In American adolescents, autoimmune markers have increased almost 300%. Researchers say that genetics cannot explain it. The rise is too fast. Something in our environment changed. And in 1998, the United States mandated folic acid fortification. The autoimmune epidemic tracks almost perfectly with that timeline. Chapter 7. The Pregnancy Catastrophe. No one takes more folic acid than pregnant women. They're told it's essential. They're told it prevents birth defects. Some doctors prescribe 4,000 to 5,000 micrograms of it daily. These women are doing exactly what they've been told to do, and that's the tragedy. 2 landmark studies found something deeply troubling. Researchers at Johns Hopkins measured folate levels in mothers shortly after delivery. Mothers with extremely high folate levels, more than 4 times what's considered adequate, had double the risk of having a child with autism. When very high folate was combined with very high vitamin B12, the risk jumped to 17.6 times higher. But the more revealing study measured cord blood, the blood that passes directly from the mother to baby through the placenta. Babies with the highest unmetabolized folic acid levels had more than double the autism risk. In African American children, nearly 10-fold. Here's the critical finding. The increased risk was specific to unmetabolized folic acid, not total folate, not methylfolate, just a synthetic form the body cannot process. The researchers stated it very clearly. Higher concentrations of cord unmetabolized folic acid, but not methylfolate or total folate, were associated with increased risk autism spectrum disorder. The problem isn't folate. Folate is essential for fetal development. The problem is the form. Throughout pregnancy, unmetabolized folic acid from supplements and fortified food crosses placenta and accumulates in the developing baby. It binds the folate receptors in the forming brain, blocking the active folate those neurons desperately need during the most critical time of development. Over 90% of newborns have detectable unmetabolized folic acid in their cord blood before they take their first breath. These babies need folate, and they got folic acid instead, and their mothers had no idea there was a difference. Yet the FDA still recommends folic acid. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists tell pregnant women to take 400 to 800 micrograms a day, even if they have known MTHFR variants. These mothers trusted these guidelines. They took their prenatals. They did everything right. The guidelines failed them, and that's gotta change. Chapter 8, Infant Formula. Government mandated harm. The FDA mandates that all infant formula must contain folic acid. Meanwhile, methylfolate and folinic acid, the natural forms infant bodies could actually use, are not approved for infant formula. The form that doesn't work is required. The forms that do work are prohibited. When a baby is born, they lose their mother's liver protection, and infant livers cannot process folic acid the way adult livers can, poorly as that already is. So unmetabolized folic acid accumulates, blocking the developing baby's brain from receiving the methylfolate it so desperately needs. If the mother breastfeeds while taking her folic acid supplements, that folic acid passes directly into her breast milk. A 2023 study found unmetabolized folic acid concentrations were 14 times higher in breast milk from mothers taking folic acid versus methylfolate. Okay, now let's think about the timeline of this chemical exposure. In the womb, unmetabolized folic acid crosses placenta. At birth, 90% of newborns already have detectable unmetabolized folic acid in their cord blood. During breastfeeding, mom unknowingly delivers 14 times more unmetabolized folic acid with every single feeding. With infant formula, every single bottle contains government-mandated folic acid that the baby cannot process. From conception through the first years of life, babies are continuously bathed in a chemical that blocks the nutrient their developing brain needs most. Autism rates went from 1 in 10,000 in the 1960s to 1 in 36 today. That is a 278-fold increase. Folic acid fortification became mandatory in 1998. Autism rates skyrocketed dramatically in that exact same time period. I'm not claiming folic acid is a sole cause of autism, but when you follow the science, when you see how folic acid blocks folate receptors in the brain, how it accumulates in cord blood, and how infant bodies can't clear it, you have to ask, why are we still mandating it in every bottle of formula while prohibiting the bioidentical forms that actually work? Chapter 9, the solution. Methylfolate and folinic acid have been available for decades. Neither create unmetabolized folic acid. Both are naturally occurring, bioidentical compounds your body recognizes and uses. Methylfolate, also called L5-MTHF, is already in the final form that your body and your baby needs. It bypasses DHFR and MTHFR entirely, no conversion required. Folinic acid, also called calcium folinate, bypasses DHFR enzyme and directly supports DNA synthesis. So why isn't everyone using these instead? Two unfortunate reasons: cost and shelf life. Folic acid costs about $4 per kilo. Folinic acid costs about $1,000 a kilo. And methylfolate costs about $13,000 per kilo. It was never about health, folks. It was about convenience and it was about money. And remember that 2020 analysis? Socioeconomic factors correlated almost perfectly with neural tube defect prevention, R squared of 85. We gave folic acid the credit, but better healthcare and nutrition were doing the actual work. So what do you do now? Stop consuming folic acid. Read every label, look through your cabinets. If it says enriched flour, fortified cereal, or lists folic acid in the ingredients, throw it away. Switch to supplements containing methylfolate. Look for L5 MTHF, quatrefolate, or metafolin on the label. Folinic acid and calcium folinate are also excellent options. Eat real food, dark leafy greens, liver, pasture-raised eggs, legumes, avocados. These contain the natural folates your body actually knows what to do with. The science is clear and the solution is simple. Your body has been using natural folates for over 300,000 years. Stop blocking it with a chemical invented 83 years ago and mandated just 28 years ago. If you want to understand how other healthy recommendations might be harming you, watch this next video where I break down the 7 genes that control your health and how to know which ones are dirty.